Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are now listening to the College Football Hour, better known as the Herschel Talkers, turning into the College Football Hour. We've got Trey, Baby Driver, see him at Baby Driver 2, Baby Got Back. And also, we have Sean, Hans Grubler. You may have seen him passed out in the shrubs. And Angry Scott. I'm not always angry. Sometimes I'm irate. Boys, how we doing?
Awesome. Thanks for the intro there, Scott. Doing great.
I'm doing phenomenal. And once again, we want to give a big shout out to Talking Dogs for, first of all, allowing us to promote our podcast on your message board.
Right.
Where pretty much everybody else, other than 247, has pretty much kicked us off or claimed that we're spamming it. So thank you. And means a lot.
Yeah, we really appreciate the sponsorship. Got some great messages and reviews. We'll continue to post on there. But yeah, make sure and everybody check out Talking Dogs membership there. They do all things recruiting, the coffee shop. They even got their own Talking Dogs swag, so we really appreciate it. Also, make sure to like and subscribe for us. Hit that notification bells, trying to get those views up. Hey, so we're going to switch it up, jumping right into it because we got a big week coming up for Ohio State. Ohio State puts the smackdown on Indiana 54-7. CJ Stroud, 4 touchdowns, 266 yards, and I think you guys just started pummeling them from the start. I was texting Sean the other day. I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Scott. This is the most dangerous team, I think. The defense is playing better. I know they're playing a little lack of competition, but I think Ohio State's dangerous down the stretch. But what do you think about this game?
Trey, before we get into this, I also, I watch all these, look at all these forums, all these message boards. It's something that's very important to me. People I've never met and probably will never meet my whole life. But I like to respond. Some people had some comments that we had too many F-bombs. And so we're going to try to clean it up a little bit. And I'm going to try really fucking hard to not drop any more F-bombs. Or only when it's really appropriate. Because
Okay.
what it is here at the College Football Hour, we want to be able to have you listen to this with your children. We'd like sponsors like Kool-Aid or like, Lucky Charms, children's cereal. But we also know for all the adult males in the audience, we know that your scrotum shaving needs are very important. So we want to make sure we go and we get some advertising for that, because if it was up to Trey, no scrotum will go unshaved for the rest of his life.
Jeez.
I mean, we can't tell you how big that promo code for manscaping is.
Manscaping.com, 20% off. Herschel Talkers.
So the big game of the week, Ohio State, Indiana.
Yeah.
Wow. Aren't you glad I'm so glad they made this a night game versus Oregon, earlier this year, because, wow, that was a hell of a game. I mean, we scored 30 points in the second quarter. For my concerns earlier this year, it is night and day difference. CJ Stroud looks like a different quarterback. He must have been banged up because I just didn't see that before he had a break during the garbage schedule. Now, I'm the first one to say, all you SEC fans out there, yeah, it's still not exactly murderer's row. Now, Indiana was supposed to be a better team this year, but we've seen as this year's go on, they aren't who we thought they were at the beginning of the year. They're kind of back to being Indiana, ha ha ha. So, I mean, 54-7 is just an absolute ass kicking. And, I think they're down to their 4th-string quarterback or something like that. I think at one point in time, the water boy went out there, and I'm not talking Adam Sandler water boy. I'm talking that here's Jack Tuttle. Oh, he's gone after the first drive. That's the only drive they scored on. And then they brought out the 4th-string guy, and, Michael Penix Jr., their stud quarterback from last year, has been hurt. So they're just not the same team that we thought they were. But, here's the thing I'll say. Ohio State, Penn State has been a bigger rivalry over the last 5 to 10 years. The Ohio State-Michigan game means a tremendous amount to us, but I'm talking about on-the-field challenges. The Ohio State-Penn State game coming up has been more of a challenge, but from what I saw at Penn State, we'll get into that later. From what I saw at Penn State this last week, I really do think that I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same thing this upcoming week. You never know. It's right around Halloween. They're going to go ahead and bring a good team into Columbus, but it's from what I saw over that 9 overtime loss that Penn State had to Illinois. I don't know if it's going to be that much different. What I saw of Ohio State, I saw a super dominant offense from this last week, and I see a defense that stepped it up. But we're going to learn more about Ohio State as it stretch down the road. They got Penn State this week, and then I think they have at Nebraska, which Nebraska is one of those teams that, yes, you should beat Nebraska, but they're a team that they're better than what their record tells you. And then we've got, I think, Purdue, and Purdue is one of those teams that hasn't, I mean, they beat Iowa earlier this year, 24-7. But Purdue is just one of those teams that, whether they're good or bad, always gives Ohio State a good game. And then we got Michigan State and Michigan. So we still have the meat of the schedule in front of us.
Yeah, definitely think you're going to get tested. Jumping right into it, got a big
well,
match.
And actually, if I can comment a little bit too, Trey, like, I mean, for some of the earlier, I guess concerns about CJ Stroud, to me, it's kind of interesting. And so his development, I don't even necessarily know if it was so much a hurt thing or if it was much of just him trying to figure out, maybe the flow of the game in relation to his reads and things like that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of really how you saw traditional quarterback development up until, they basically stopped allowing people to play like legitimate defense, right? And so to me, I think it's, there's something to be said for, or to at least explore or consider that might have been the factor too, that he's just finally kind of gotten everything underneath him. Now that said too, Indiana is pretty atrocious too. So, I mean, Ohio State certainly looking better. It never hurts to have your quarterbacks play improved. And two, all you can do is really beat who they put in front of you, right?
That's right. Hey, I'd rather have us go ahead and giving a beat down to the Indianas of the world, the Rutgers, the Marylands of the world, instead of, I'll just pick out a couple teams that, a top-notch program has lost to, NC State and Pitt. And that, of course, I'm referring to our friends at Clemson. Boy, I hate to see such a nice guy like Dabo Swinney struggle. And speaking of which, DJ Ugalele, or whatever his last name is, wow, is he not the guy who he thought he was? Because that's the other thing that happens. Everybody that gets excited, Ohio State football, Georgia football, I got this 5-star guy. Well, your 5-star guy might be a bust. And this 2-star guy that you picked up, he might be great. You never know. One of Ohio State's, okay, we have a couple running backs right now. Travion Henderson, he looks like a 5-star guy. He looks like one of the best running backs in America right now. And then you also have Mayan Williams for Ohio State, another stud running back, but he was like the 3-star guy. He wasn't, recruited very high. So these ratings, you never know. What are they going to do? What are they going to develop into? I keep on going back to Chris Olave, wasn't a very high-ranked guy, but find the right guy for your program. What do you want? You want like Alabama. You got all these 5-star studs that you turn into, and you hit on every single one of them. But the fact of the matter is, it's just not always going to happen.
Right. Well, and the other thing with Alabama too is, if you go back and look to their recruitings, like there's plenty, because they get so many of them, there's plenty of 5-stars that just don't pan out. It's probably 50-50 for the vast majority of them. And the guys that are giving these kids these rankings aren't, Bill Walsh or Ron Wolf, you know what I mean? They're just, ordinary Joes like the rest of us that just, are grading these guys out based on camp or the fact that they're just bigger, stronger, and faster than, 95% of the people they're going against.
Well, there's other guys too, for whatever reason, things don't work out in college. They went to the wrong university, and, things are just different in the world of the transfer portal, that now they can go and they can leave and everybody can go and get a shot, which is so unique, because now what you really have to do is, not only do you need to be like, yeah, CJ Stroud's doing good, but let me tell you, Quinn Ewers, he looks really good. And who also looks good is, our one or the two back. We're not going to hold on to all these guys. I think Jack Miller is his name, out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I think he's the 3rd-string quarterback right now, because Quinn Ewers isn't even playing. And I can't believe I'm forgetting the guy who's our backup right now at Ohio State, kid out of Pennsylvania. I see his face, but I'm drawing a blank.
Trey, go back over to the Ohio State Indiana thing, because the kid played.
What is his name?
Kyle McCord. There you go.
Kyle McCord. There you go. Well, there's a kid he's a true freshman. But what I'm saying is, CJ Stroud is a redshirt freshman. Then you got Kyle McCord. You're not going to hang on every single one of these guys. What you want is, you'd love to have all these guys on campus, and then who's going to go and work out? and who's going to work out best for you. I think at one point in time, Cam Newton and Tim Tebow are on the same team. Well, obviously Cam Newton was a more accomplished pro, but you can't tell me that Tim Tebow wasn't the right quarterback to run that Florida offense, which we'll get into that Florida Georgia game later this year.
Well, and I'll say this, coming off of the Heisman Trophy, it's really hard to bench him, but I'll tell you, Scott, again, you can call me a liar, but I remember watching the Florida spring game, and even Urban Meyer came out and said, I really don't know who's going to start between Cam and Tebow, and Cam looked way better in their spring game, but it's just one of those things where how do you bench a Heisman Trophy winner? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's very difficult to go and pull the starter that has had success. And I still go back to, and I know Georgia fans, you don't want me to do this, and I understand, but to have the stones to go ahead and pull Jalen Hurts in the national championship game when they're playing Georgia and put in Tua, where he's really had no experience. It's not like he started out the second half just killing it, but then he took off, and that's the thing. That's the only championship he won. One's better than none. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
All those Clemson fans that said, "Hey, look, we're kicking ass. We beat Alabama by 4 touchdowns. We don't got nothing but good things coming forward." Well, then you got 2019. You got smashed by LSU, and last year Ohio State beat your ass, and now you're having trouble, which I thoroughly enjoy. However, you never know what's going to come. It's just everybody goes back to when Ohio State had Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins. Oh, don't you wish Joe Burrow would have been the quarterback? I'm like, Joe Burrow his last year at LSU, sure, anybody will take that.
Right.
But at the time, Dwayne Haskins, man, he's still top 15 pick in the NFL, and I think you forget how well he fit into that system. He was a tremendous thrower. So maybe things haven't gone as well in the NFL, but you just never know how things are going to translate. So,
well, and the other
that's
thing
always
too
just a
is
crapshoot.
right. And the other thing too, Scott, is that part of Joe Burrow's success could have been. What did he have? 3 wide receivers that went in the first round, plus Joe Brady, who's to me is the most brilliant offensive mind to hit college football and a long time. It's unfortunate he doesn't really want to stay there, but hey, that's his professional decision. But that could have had a lot to do with it too, because if you're really better than Dwayne Haskins, you probably would have beaten him out, right?
At least in college, and that's so I don't blame the kid at all for going. And the thing is, apparently, a lot of I want to say his dad, maybe his uncle played in Nebraska, and then Scott Frost is like, "Oh no, we're happy with our guy." I'm like, "You sure about that?" You thought, hey, would you go down to Cincinnati because Luke Fickell is taking over? And Tennessee fans, they want to hear this because I'm sure all the Tennessee fans that are listening to the College Football Hour, we appreciate that. Please hold on to all your golf balls and your bottles of brown substances. But if Greg Schiano would have went to Tennessee, the rumor is that Joe Burrow was going to follow him there. And, you've had mostly garbage in Tennessee for, 15 years, 20, at least 15. So
yeah, Scott, let me tell you probably why that wouldn't have happened. He would have looked probably at that Tennessee roster and saw absolutely nothing that was going to help him, and then compared it to LSU, where you saw first round potential all over the place, and on top of Ed Ogeron, who, regardless of whatever anybody else wants to say or about him, he knows how to sell himself now as a genuinely nice guy.
Well, here's what I'll say about Coach O. I will say this. He's a tremendous recruiter. He cares a lot about LSU football. But as far as that goes, and I'm not saying he doesn't know football, but I'm saying he had 2 tremendous coordinators, offensive and defensive. And now he didn't replace him with equal talent. And you can see where we are 2 years removed, and you're gone. So I will say this. It would have been the easy thing to do. He bet on himself, and obviously it's worked out very well. I do wonder if you had, hey, I'm going to follow that coach because he's going to this big-time program, and that's a good fit for me. So I do wonder how that would have worked out, So because, believe it or not, Tennessee has the potential, God forbid, I can't believe I'm saying this, has the potential to be a big program. They just haven't been for 15 years. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, right. And, at least the thing in the SEC that I think that tends to be the case, and maybe it's not all that different from any other conferences, is that normally if two of the three programs surrounding a state are going to be, great, I guess, or very good, you're going to have one that's kind of down. And so I think Tennessee's kind of drawing that small straw. Like Georgia's downtime, I'd say, was the 90s. And so you had both. I mean, really, you had three universities in the state of Florida that all at one point were pretty dominant. And then you also had Alabama and Tennessee. So I think it's one of those things that kind of just ebbs and flows, right?
Well, it does, but then some programs, are they ever going to come back? Nebraska football, are they ever going to come back to be what they were? Like in the 90s? Nah, I don't know about that,
That
but
is tough.
At the same time, think about if everybody wants to remember what Alabama was pre-Saban, they sure as hell weren't what they are now. So there's a lot of things that go into building a program. But, I'd like to tell you, for everyone listening to this, to get more in Ohio State and Indiana highlights, Ohio State won the game 54-7. So I'd like to give you more highlights. Us scoring 30 points in the second quarter is a hell of a highlight. Indiana had like negative yardage in the second quarter. I want to say like negative 28 yards or something. And they couldn't even they started pulling people out of the stands to put them back at quarterback. So it was almost kind of funny to watch. So I'd like to give you a lot of other highlights from that, but it was just an ass kicking. And, they're not at full strength, but Indiana, here's how Indiana does with expectations. And they've fallen short, needless to say. And they just don't have that same kind of depth you're going to see in some of these other programs, like in Ohio State, like in Georgia. Now, what I can tell you is we go and we segue into the Ohio State-Penn State game is how wore out is Penn State going to be from that 9 overtime loss to Illinois, which I guess isn't like most overtimes. I didn't start watching the game until overtime. And then it was just kind of comical to watch because they both had field goals, I think. And then I want to say in the second overtime, you have to go for 2 points. And then on the third overtime, they just have 2-point conversions going back and forth. So it's kind of comical to watch. Nobody can convert. And then finally Illinois converts, and then Penn State comes back and converts. And at 9 overtimes, don't you think the game would be higher scoring than what was the final of the game? I think it was 18-16.
Mm-hmm.
Like layups.
So don't you think in 9 overtimes you would have hit the over? I don't know what the under-over on that game, but I'm going to go ahead and say it was under.
Exactly. It was. What did you, speaking of that, what did you guys think about the new play or the new overtime rules? Going for 2. It used to be in the old start at the 25, kind of go back and forth.
I mean, I'm all right with it. It's just, I think probably what they're just trying to do is figure out a quicker way to kind of get the game over with. To me, I think the college football system, for everything else we can criticize them for, really kind of came up with the perfect overtime solution, because it's, each team gets the ball, gets an opportunity to score, and then the opponent has an opportunity to match that, right? If you don't match it, then you lose. So, I mean, to me, it's fine. I mean, I guess going for 2 things done with the idea of, one of these teams is going to, at some point, miss a 2-point conversion. And so at that point, the winner's decided a little bit quicker than 9 overtimes. Because I get where that can kind of be a little bit ridiculous too. But I think it's the most exciting overtime in all of sports, really. I mean, just knowing you're getting the ball within scoring range automatically.
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, I think the reason I want to say that when LSU played Texas A&M back in Joe Burrow's first year at LSU, they did 7 overtimes, and it was going on forever. And I want to say Joe Burrow or somebody from Texas A&M had to go to the hospital to get an IV just for it. So it's all done in this whole player safety era that we're in. And I get that, but it's also, I think it's meant to speed the game up, and it definitely didn't speed the game up. It slowed the game down because it showed you how ineffective these teams could be. So it also, to lose that game still and 9 overtimes, and then go in. You got to go on the road to Columbus, and I think their defense is still decent, but I think offensively, I think we're just going to eat Sean Clifford alive.
Yeah.
I think he's going to come out less of a man than what he was to begin the game.
Yeah, point spread on this is actually 18.5 for a top 20 matchup. CJ Stroud. Hey, is he possibly keeps going? Is he Heisman Trophy material candidate, you think?
I wouldn't have thought that earlier this year, but now it's possible with the type of numbers that he's putting up.
I don't know
That's
who
very
you put
possible
above
because-
him, honestly.
Well, that's the other.
Matt
That's
Corral?
my other point.
Matt Corral.
Who?
Matt Corral.
Yeah, they're from Ole Miss.
Dude, he had 100
I mean, maybe.
yards rushing two games ago. That's crazy for a quarterback.
Yeah, he'll be up there.
Yeah.
I think here's the deal. If this game was at Penn State like it was last year, I'd be more concerned because that probably would have been a whiteout environment.
Yeah.
But instead, we're getting them in Columbus for a night game, thank God. So I'd like to have Oregon. We like to play that at noon. I'd like to have Akron be at 7:30 because when the Zips come to town, man, you better make it prime time. So, however, that is great to have it be a night game. And at least now, I mean, anything's possible because they're going to come ready to play. I think it might be close early. I do expect our offense to pull away. They do have some defense, but I think we'll be able to go, and a stud offense should be able to go and I think beat their defense. But then we just have to see. I just don't think Clifford's going to have enough for what we have. So I expect a big Ohio State win. What's the line on the game?
18.5.
18.5.
Wow. I think Ohio State by 28.
All right, give us the score. What you got?
Let's see. If Ohio State by 28, I'm really good at math like Trey is. So let's see. 28. Let's carry the 1. 35-7.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I think you guys are going to dominate. I'll give you my pick. I'm going to go 38-10. I think maybe they get a backdoor touchdown. Maybe when you got your backups in, but you guys will definitely CJ Stroud and those guys rolling. I got 38-10. You guys rolling and cover. What you got, Sean?
Well, first of all, I want to give two things I think we're going to want to watch for in this game. One of which is, I think you're going to find out how much CJ Stroud has progressed in this game based on his performance, because this is probably the best defense since Oregon that he's faced. So, I think seeing how he, handles that, I think is going to be big. And it's going to be telling as far as, what his potential, what Ohio State's potential is, at least offensively for the remainder of the year. The other thing I think that, and I guess to back up on CJ Stroud, I'd say that if he can get 67% passing and over 250 yards, maybe 3 touchdowns, Ohio State's for real at this point in the year. I'm not saying they don't become for real later on in the year, but at this point, at least offensively, to me, that says they're for real. Defensively, I think if you can hold Noah Cain less than 100 yards, I think that addresses the other concern I think that a lot of Ohio State fans had, and that was the running defense at least. And so I think if you can do that, that again says, all right, this defense is kind of for real at this point. And so with that said, at this point, I don't have any doubts that I've got some doubts, but, I'm not overly concerned that CJ Stroud can't hit the 300-point mark in this game. I also see Noah Cain getting over 100 yards. And some of that might be the strategic as well, because, the more he's carrying the ball, more the clock winds down, right? I've thought Penn State's been overrated really since I watched that Auburn game. And it was only from the standpoint that as SEC fans, we knew Auburn wasn't all of that good. Scott, Auburn's pretty much gotten, for the most part, scraps left over from Alabama, Georgia, and even Florida. So from a talent standpoint, at least on paper, we knew they weren't that particularly good. And they certainly pushed Penn State in Penn State's own backyard. I'm going to say it's going to be like 45, maybe 10, something like that. Yeah. I mean, just again, Ohio State's offense is so explosive. I don't doubt that they're going to have the ability to kind of get up early. And again, when you got people like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Wakanda Forever, as we're going to call him, number 11, the wide receiver, plus the running backs too. You know what I mean? I think there's enough weapons there that I think they're going to find ways to score on Penn State.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
Is that some SEC bias when you say here's our excuses because Auburn went and they lost that game?
No, it's not that. To me, it's just that if anything, I'm just using it as a barometer, right? I can understand why you'd say that. And if that's the case, it's certainly not. Because I think Ohio State could play with anybody in the SEC. And I mean, the reality is you prove that every year in the playoffs, right? To me, I just know Auburn's not very good, right? And so to me, if
they are
Penn
very
State's
good compared to Georgia,
home,
right?
Well, but to me, if I know Penn State's not, or if Auburn's not very good and they're struggling at home to beat Auburn, and they somehow make it into the top 10, I'm like, it's probably not an accurate. They're probably not a top 10 team. Is all I'm saying.
Well, I thought it's supposed to mean more though, Sean, in the SEC.
Well, normally it does. The only time it doesn't mean more is when we lose.
Exactly.
Oh, I got you. So pick and choose. So
Exactly.
because Auburn did beat LSU, and of course they fired Orgeron, and then Georgia definitely put it on them. So I think we can all agree Georgia a better team than Penn State. But they also beat Arkansas, which we can also see Georgia put it on Arkansas. So it's I don't see when I say, oh, Penn State's not that good of a team. Well, I don't think they're a playoff team. But if we're going to go and take Penn State out of the top 10 or the top 15, okay, but who are you putting ahead of them? Because we can also say, well, Kentucky, oh, hey, that's a better team. I'm like, yeah, but they got smashed by Georgia. So is it a better team that then gets destroyed when they play somebody good?
Right. I get that. Maybe I am biased. Honestly, I honestly don't know.
See, I helped you
that...
come along on your bias. You're welcome.
Exactly. Well, but I do know Auburn's not like top 15 material. You know what I mean? So to me, if you're struggling that much at home on a big game like that, I mean, good teams win, great teams cover, right?
Exactly.
But what I will say, and I'm not here to defend Penn State and who they are.
I hope not, Scott. I mean, we know all about their allegations over the last decade.
Let's just talk about on the football field here for a second. What I am saying is a team can change throughout the year. Because right now, if Ohio State and Oregon play, maybe we lose that game again. I don't know. I'll tell you that Ohio State's favorite going into it. And I feel better today than I felt the second week of the season. And we saw that back in 2014 when Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech. And we said, well, maybe Virginia Tech's are really good. No, they're garbage. And we had to figure some things out. And they hadn't seen a defense. They threw a defense at it we hadn't seen before. We had no answers for it. But then the team got better throughout the year. So that's another thing. Like, who is going to evolve as the year goes on? And then you're going to take the pretenders, from the contenders. The one thing I'll say is Georgia football has been very consistent this whole year. So they've been consistent since game one, even though we all know that Clemson is garbage now, but they've, handled business the whole way through. In fact, I don't know if y'all saw that text I dropped you, that they showed the FBS ranks that the Georgia defense leads in points per games and leads in yards per game. Ohio State offense leads in points per game and yards per game. Now, I'll say this, maybe an Ohio State guy, I think the offense looks great right now. I am still very concerned, in particular, if we were to line up with Georgia today, I'm very concerned about Georgia's D-line in particular. I think I'll take my wide receivers currently over your secondary. However, I got to have time to throw it to the secondary. So it's interesting. They used to always be good defense, be good offense. I don't know about that in today's game. Certainly not in the NFL, maybe not in college football. But I think even though I'd be rooting for the Buckeyes, if they were to line up with Georgia today, I don't think we win that game. Georgia's certainly favored. probably win by about 7 points or something like that. But it's where will we be at the end of the year? You know. So in terms of that goes, I think Ohio State will handle Penn State, and then I think when I look at the rest of the schedule, you know, we're going to go and have some other good games, but we still got to get through because right now, unless something crazy happens, we really can't have 2 losses. Georgia, I know you don't want to lose any games, but right now, with what you've done resume-wise, you can still lose a game and make the playoffs. You don't want to lose a game because then it just you put it into, well, how do I look and all that other garbage. However, you could still lose the game. It's just that right now, at least, I don't think you can lose 2. I think they'll put in a team probably that loses 2 games that are close games before they put in a team that has 1 loss that gets blown out. Because what we've seen consistently is even the year that Ohio State got in over Penn State, I want to say it was 2016, Penn State lost to Michigan that year and just got blown out. I mean, they just got annihilated. So that's the one thing you can't have. But you can have a close loss, but you can't have, you know, lose by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Right. No, I don't disagree with that either.
Well, I'm glad you don't disagree because it happens to be I'm not wrong.
You're not.
Never
You're definitely
happened.
not.
All right.
I once had an awkward moment just to see what it felt like.
I think we all agree. We got Ohio State routing Penn State. We all agree on that. So I think there's going to be a good weekend for the Buckeyes.
Do we want to get into the undercard, Trey? The undercard there of Georgia and Florida, those games that are as important that they play earlier in the day.
Exactly. That is correct. So the annual 3:30 world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Jacksonville, number 1 Georgia rolling in against a 4-3 disappointing. They've lost 3 times. Florida coming off really bad loss against LSU and a fired Ed Orgeron. So Georgia favored by 14, which is this is interesting. Georgia did get beat last year, had Bennett struggled, got injured, and had to put in Dwan Mathis, who is now with Temple, ironically, University. And we got a disappointing loss. Always like to look at the overall series. Where we got that? These here. Overall series, which is a 52 33-3, depends on which fan base you talk to.
Right, can you actually pull that up?
Yeah, I was trying to this thing's in the thing here, sorry. But anyway, what's your thoughts on the game? Sean, 14-point spread. What would you like to see? And who do you think your prediction is going to be? Who's going to start at quarterback from the early? We had the week off. You had to pick.
Had you asked me this question 3 weeks ago, I would have said JT Daniels for sure. At this point, I'm thinking maybe Stetson Bennett. And the reason why I say that is I think that Kirby kind of understands that he'll probably need both of them if he's going to do anything post-season. And so I think he knows that it's been a bit of a nagging injury with that shoulder for JT Daniels. And JT Daniels, I think, is clearly the more effective passer when he's in there. So you're probably going to, at some point, want to utilize him. But right now, I don't think you need him in this game. And Trey, I remember you were like vehemently like disputing me on this point, but I think there's enough talent everywhere else on Georgia's team that you can walk on to the field a 5'8", no pun intended, former walk-on mailman.
John, not if he goes and he shoots up everyone
by
on
the name of Stetson Bennett and still win this.
Right. I can
John,
see.
if you remember, did they call him the mailman? Because he said he was going to shoot up everyone in the building if they didn't offer him a scholarship.
I think that's exactly why they call him that, to be completely honest.
All right, so you like him playing. Here in a perfect world, what I would like to see, just to kind of butt in, is we get up by 2 or 3 scores comfortably, and I think you can get JT Daniels some series in the second half to blow the rust off, because I think you're going to need him down the stretch. I don't think you can beat Alabama, or I'm going to throw Ohio State in there with the mailman if you have a shootout. And I think you need to get 35 to 40. I'm going to say 40 on those teams to win outright. Bennett's did a great job the last 4 starts, 10 touchdowns, hadn't turned the ball over. He's been, business as usual. So it's been good, but.
Right. But we're just talking about against Florida. I don't think you're going to need that.
Right. I got you.
I mean, I think that he's going to be the one thing I think that's been big for Stetson Bennett this year, and it's different from years past, is, well, first of all, I think the offensive line is actually giving him really good protection.
They're getting better.
We're like top 4, I think, in terms of pass protection and offensive line, but I think probably just as important, if not more so than that, to the extent that they're not really related, is the fact that he's really just, if a play isn't there, he's throwing it away. He's not trying to make a play downfield, which I think last year was part of his issue, is that, if it was, by way of example, 3rd and 17, he was trying to get the first down, even if the guy that was in first down territory was double covered and the running back was wide open, even if that only gets you 5 yards, he would basically throw a pass and get it picked last year, where I think this year he's kind of taking what the defense gives him.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is I think that Kirby's, he's a former player, and he played at a time where, for the most part, we were getting smashed by Florida every year.
Yeah.
And so you can just tell by how competitive we've been in all of these games how important this was. Last year's probably the most uncompetitive game we've had, but again, we had a ton of injuries in that game, especially on defense, after having played Kentucky.
Yeah.
So although I think probably Kirby understands that this team's probably not in any danger of losing this game as long as they handle business, I do think he's probably circled this a little bit as one, having one to make a bit of a statement game, I guess. Just based on how things went last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we are pretty healthy. Also, hopefully we'll get some guys back. I know I listened to the press conference today, and it still sounds like a lot of iffy guys like Burton can play. Rosemary Jacks could play. I know Milton with the sprained MCL is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks, possibly more. We might get Kenny McIntosh back. We're pretty deep at running back. But I'd like to see get some of the wideouts that hadn't been playing, at least kind of get them back going. I think we got Missouri next week. Probably shouldn't need them for that, but you need them down the stretch to get the rust off the head of everybody. We get chemistry, I think.
Well, and to be honest, and that sounds like contrarian to me, the one that, and I get that with the wide receivers, it'd be nice to at least get some of those guys back so they can start working on their in-game conditioning.
Yeah.
The one to me you really want to see back at this point is JT Daniels, because it is kind of unusual that he ain't back yet.
I agree. This will be his 5th game, and he had a bye week.
And either it's Kirby maybe phrased things wrong, or just didn't really think before he said this, but he basically said it was like a grade 1 level strain. I think like a month ago, and he's still not back, which certainly doesn't, I guess, hinder or quiet any of those rumors that maybe this kid's toughness is in question. But to me, that's the one that would be great to see him back and healthy again. Just because, at some point you're going to need him, and just, you're kind of dealing at least mentally with the unknown. And, Stetson Bennett, you're going to win the East with this guy, which, to me, it's not only a testament to how much talent he's got around him, but it really is testament to him too, because
he hasn't proved yet.
Well, and he could, exactly. And he could have easily, have thrown 30 picks at this point, and or that's an over exaggeration, but he certainly could have done some things to lose some games, right? And he hasn't done that. He's done everything that he's been asked to do. But, at this point, I mean, how long has it been? It's been close to a month since JT Daniels played, is it not?
Yeah, this will be the 5th game. If he misses, I believe.
So, yeah, at this point, it's like, come on, like, you need to get on the field and just do something.
Yeah, and then to quote the great Bill Belichick, or he might have coined it, or he focused, or whoever said it, the best ability is availability. and he has not been that. Another stat for you: he's missed since 2019. JT Downs has missed 21 of 29 starts or games. I know he's been injured, but that's still a lot.
Trey, is that your best availability? Is that why you're always here, rain or shine,
I am
for the college football hour, even though you do forget the name of the show?
That is correct.
Now, I'll give you my take on the game here. First off, I think you can tell that Stetson Bennett's really hitting that weight room. I think it's for all that time he spends at the grocery store working weeknights, because I can really tell that, you know, him stacking those shelves, man, especially during the pandemic, it's really paid off. And then I mean, also I bought a pair of jeans from him at Kohl's, and but that wasn't on game day. That was on a Wednesday. So thank you, Stetson, for everything you do. What I'll say, all jokes aside, he's a very serviceable quarterback. And Georgia fans, if you disagree with me, and that's my guy and everything, will he be your guy when he can't win you a big game?
Sure.
Right now, he can make some plays. He is not garbage. So don't get me wrong, he is not garbage. Can he take you to the promised land? If he can, it'll be just this year, which fine. One national title is better than none. But I think you're going to need, at some point in time where you play against Alabama, one of these other top teams, I think you're going to need that. In 2021, I think you're going to need that top little quarterback to take you over. So it probably is. I think at some point in time you are going to need JT. Yeah. So, but we'll just have to see. Now, if is my math correct? Is this the 100th game between Georgia and Florida, or is there any vacated games in there? I thought, if my math's correct, this is the 100th game.
Yep, could be.
Do some quick math. Do some quick math there, Trey.
Could be. Depends on which side you look at, because I think they say that they have some games we didn't play. I believe there's always constant.
Well, isn't the current record 53 to 44 and 2? So if with my quick math, that's 99 games, unless there's some vacated games I'm unaware of.
Right, and Georgia has won 3 out of 4. We've done pretty well recently. You know, there's been some streaks, but overall competitive.
Here would be my concern as a Georgia fan. Mm-hmm. I look at Florida as a wounded animal, and sometimes you back a wounded animal into a corner, and it comes out and it attacks. So which Florida team's going to show up?
Right.
Is it the Florida teams that's going to show up versus Bama, not only last year but this year, to make it a close game, or are you going to see the Florida team that showed up in the bowl game against Oklahoma last year, i.e. they didn't show up? Yeah. So what team are you going to get? Right. I can't sit here and act like an expert on Florida football. I've seen just a handful of their games, but I think they've been very inconsistent. How many losses do they have? 4 losses?
3.
They have 3 losses.
4 and 3.
4 if you count Saturday, right?
There you go. Yeah, that is it.
But I mean, I think Georgia should win. Georgia should win by 12 points. I think early they're going to go and they're going to keep it close. What's the spread on the game?
14.
Okay. I think Georgia's going to win by 12. So I still think that Georgia in 2021, it's difficult to win most or all of your games with just a dominant defense. And don't get me wrong, Georgia's still putting up some points offensively.
Actually ranked 13 in total offense, surprisingly. Ohio State is number 1. You're number 18. We're number 1. So very similar, vice versa.
What? But you're not the number 1 scoring offense. So you're like a top 15 scoring offense.
Yeah, we're top 15. That's correct.
Okay. Well, what's your defense?
Number 1. There
you go. You see the point I'm making?
Yeah.
Have you connected the dots?
Yeah.
So the point is I think at some point in time, Stetson's going to make you some plays, but he's going to have to make plays in several games. Right. So that is, can Stetson be the man down the road in 2021? Can he do enough without just handing the ball off, to make those other throws? And he's made some great throws. I'm not taking anything away from Stetson, even though it sounds like I am. I'm not. I wonder what it's going to be like when he plays against Nick Saban, assuming that you all play in the SEC championship, or that you get one of these other top. It might not be till playoff time, So who knows? I'm not saying that Stetson is garbage. I'm not saying that. I'm just is he like some of these other top quarterbacks right now? That's all. And I think the answer to that is no. He could be enough, but that remains to be seen.
Hey, give us a quick. I know you said 12 points. Give us a prediction number or score wise.
24-12.
All right, it's running. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make a pick. I'm gonna go 35-14. I think Mullen's gonna have some schemes in the first quarter to hang around, and they might try to go with AR-15 Anthony Richardson, even though he's a little sporadic throwing, but he can run. Emory Jones is not ready, and that defense makes adjustments. I got 35-14. Georgia rolls in the second half, pulls away, and we see a little bit of JT Daniels at the end to blow the rust off. 35-14 Dogs. And we're watching it in Savannah, Georgia. We booked it today. Sean, Little Todd, and hopefully Chris will join us. We're not making the Jacksonville trip, but we're going to be there close in Savannah, Georgia. What you got, Sean?
To me, really, it's about what Florida team comes out, right? Because I'll say this about Mullen's teams is that they tend to be really unpredictable, right? I mean, a lot of times where you figure a team would be down and out of it mentally, and this is certainly a game where they probably ought to be because, they're not winning the East. I mean, a decent bowl game is probably looking questionable at best. And you're just coming off of a, kind of a heartbreaking loss to a rival in LSU, where you may not necessarily expect them to do much. To me, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it's going to be 37. I was going to go 35-13, Trey, but I think it's way too close to your score. I'm going to maybe go 31-13. I just think that part of this, again, and I could be completely wrong on this, but I feel like Kirby's going to want to make a statement defensively because last year we got absolutely killed on the wheel route. He kind of prides himself on being this defensive teacher or whatever. So I think he wants to get his students over the wheel route, right? So
Kobe Dean one more year, he can sniff it out.
Right. And the other thing too is just the one thing I'll say about our offense is that although our offensive ranking, I think, has gone, it's where it's gone up and then it's gone down. The one thing that's interesting about our offense is I feel like it's been fairly explosive. And then, so I feel like we can put up points. The only thing is that once we've kind of put up points at a certain level, we've kind of got into cruise control and just, let our defense kind of handle things, right? So, presuming it still happens, again, I think that it's probably 31-13. It may even be more than that. Like Stetson Bennett, in the first half got us up 14-0 last year, did he not?
He did. Another thing I want to mention is Todd Monken against Grantham. That's a mismatch. And with LSU put whatever 400 yards in that one kid, like 285. I think he said, or whatever, Herschel Walker's record in one game. And before that, he had a bunch of average games. Don't let us sniff running the ball because Kirby will run it down his throat. We'll run it and run it. We'll pound. So
he'll stick something down his throat.
I know. Damn. So hey, we got Georgia. We got Georgia rolling. Hopefully, we'll extend that 100-game streak from.
Is that a 100-game streak, Trey?
Well, 100-game streak. You know what I mean?
I feel like unless if there's some type of major national disaster, the game will be played in 2022.
In Jacksonville.
Period. Jacksonville, out of Jacksonville, like they're going to play it again. I think what you want to say is hopefully Kirby wins one this year and extends his overall winning record against.
I think he would be 4-2, correct?
He would be.
He's 3-2. That is it. That's right. Right before we ended here, anything you guys want to touch on with the rankings coming up, or there's some other big games?
Yeah, Trey, I have a couple of things to discuss around college football here. Looks like Texas Tech fired their coach Wells. And I was thinking, who would be a good fit for the Texas Tech program? Don't you think somebody like Cliff Kingsbury would be a good fit? If he wasn't having so much success in the NFL, maybe they'd bring him back, don't you think?
Maybe. Or Graham Harrell.
Who would have thought? Texas Tech's going to fire Cliff Kingsbury. He'll go be the offensive coordinator at USC, except he wasn't the offensive coordinator at USC because an NFL team. So he, fell down, but it was up the stairs, if you will, right?
Arizona Cardinals.
Ended up with the Arizona Cardinals, who are now undefeated.
Exactly.
So Now, who are your thoughts on LSU? I mean, do you think they go up to Joe Brady, or do you think it's going to be who are your bets on?
I got Lane.
To get. Do you think Lane Kiffin to the HC?
Yeah, Lane Train.
Yeah, I mean, as less of ideal of a candidate as that is in my mind, yeah, I think that's probably the best candidate at this point.
I'll make a hot take for you. You heard it here. You might have heard it somewhere else. I think Lane Train to LSU and Rattler is transfers from Oklahoma, and he's your quarterback at LSU with Lane Train next year.
Interesting.
And they're slinging.
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting as well because here's the deal, right? When you're transferring within the conference, Lane's had a lot of different jobs, and in as much as Tennessee hates him,
right.
He left and went to the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And then he got fired, and then he came back with Alabama, and then what was it, FAU,
right.
and now Ole Miss. So when you leave, not only in the conference, but you leave in the conference and you go to a team in the same division, that's really done. I'm not saying it's not done. Steve Sarkisian, he left Washington and then went to USC as well. So, but it was same conference, but a different division, North versus South in Pac-12. So it's just not something you see very often.
Yeah, definitely. That was interesting. But Texas Tech, I guess you put that as a second tier job, mid. I don't even know where you put that. They are ironically 5-3. So wonder what they got mad at them about. I mean, if you win 6 or 7 wins there, that's pretty spot on, right? You got Oklahoma this week.
Well, but you got to remember though that they were probably like 8-4, 10-2 a lot of times. I mean, they had that one win over Texas, and so they kind of forgot that they were irrelevant there for a significant portion of their history.
Yeah.
Once they started winning a few games.
Well, expectations change over time. But speaking of,
I'll tell you what, Trey. Let's. I believe we had some feedback. No, go ahead, Scott. I interrupted you.
You did, but anyways, what I was going to say too. Speaking about your boy Lane, I'm sorry, is it Lane Train or Train Lane? It's Lane Train, right?
Lane Train, yeah.
Okay. Did you not see the Ole Miss game where they had Arch Manning in attendance and they put Manning in the end zone and then Manning on the jersey? They just happened to be, returning Eli Manning's jersey when Arch Manning's going to be there. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's just really, I haven't seen this of a big of a deal made so much of a kid's recruiting. And it would be if he wasn't Archie's grandson and Peyton and Eli's nephew. But I mean, it'll be interesting. I see him going somewhere in the South. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but do you see where do you really see him end up, or is it just because it's just going to change? I probably don't see him going to Ole Miss.
To me, the best shot Ole Miss has, at least at this point, is if Lane is there. But to me, it's hard for me. And the other thing is too is his family's so sophisticated at all levels of football that they may not be interested in what Lane. Maybe they may know Lane. They may know a lot of these coaches at a different level. So what they're looking at might be completely different than what your average recruit is. You know what I mean? As object and I guess non-specific as that can be, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it may just be about where the kid's most comfortable. But, I would have to think that if Lane Kiffin ends up at LSU, that's going to that makes things interesting because the kid's right there in New Orleans,
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Should be interesting. Another one I want to ask Scott about, because it is a big game. Your beloved Michigan State Wolverines, big matchup against Michigan State. Michigan minus 4.5. The fighting Mel Tuckers. What's your thought on that one? Hey, is that the big noon kick for you guys? I know you love that.
That's
time.
The what now?
Is that the big noon kick? I believe Fox.
I think that is a noon kick.
You love it.
I think that is a noon kick. So then I can watch. Now we don't have all the good games on at the same time, which I would have watched. I'm sure a lot of other folks that weren't watching Ohio State weren't watching Ohio State and Indiana, but then there was a couple of the good games at the same time. Well, potential good games. They all ended up being garbage, but Notre Dame and, and USC and Tennessee and Alabama was actually closer than the expert would have thought. But when you look at that score, it still looked like an ass kicking, which surprisingly it wasn't. But now at least we have some good games kind of spaced out. I think it is a noon kick between Michigan and Michigan State, and then that Florida Georgia game at 3:30, and then of course the most important game of the day. That's what they put in a prime time is Ohio State Penn State. But yeah, I think one of these teams we're going to find out who they are, and dare I say that I think Michigan is gonna be Michigan State. I'll tell you what, though, Michigan State always gives them a lot of trouble. So, where is that game? Is that game at Michigan or is it at Michigan State?
At Michigan State.
Okay. See, that's. I mean, what's the line on it?
4.5. Michigan is favored by 4.5.
I think Michigan's going to win the game, believe it or not. And I still don't know how good of a team they are at 7-0, but I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to Michigan. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because to me, in a lot of ways, they're mirror images of each other. They're very run power teams. I think Michigan's just got a few more athletes than what Michigan State has. And so I think Michigan gets this one. I think it's going to be close.
Yep.
Because the one thing about, at least that I remember and recollect from having at least Mel Tucker, Michigan State's head coach, as a DC, is that you can maybe get on him a bit in the first half, but he's really great with adjustments at the second half, and he seems to shut things down. So to me, it's just, I don't think this game's going to get too far out of hand as far as Michigan goes, barring, some crazy injuries or whatever. But I think Michigan's just got a little bit more talent at this point than what Michigan State has. So I don't know. I maybe see them winning it 24-17, 24-14, something like that.
All right. I think I like it. I think
the other thing I'll say, I'm sorry, go ahead there, Trey.
Yeah, I'm going to sorry to interrupt and make my pick. I think this is going to be a noon, sleepy, slow, Big Ten, big offensive lineman running the ball. And I got Michigan 21-17. It'll be close on the push, but Michigan barely with a little more athletes, 21-17. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
What I'll say is I'm actually very impressed with how a lot of these teams have come back after that COVID year. And that goes for Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, some of your top teams right now. You can make the argument the Big Ten East is the best division of college football right now. Now, we'll see just as that how it plays out over the rest of the year. Because there's been times that I watch a good Ohio State team, and, hey, maybe they are a top 5, top 6 team. But then they play that top-level opponent, and, hey, it isn't who we thought they were. And other times they live up to those expectations. So how are we going to see it with these others? But think about how horrible Michigan did last year, Michigan State, Penn State. They all had pretty bad years. And I was like, maybe they're going to fire these guys. But we didn't start playing football, I think, until October 24th last year. So a lot of these folks have come off of this COVID year. And I think right now, when I look at the rankings, I think the rankings look just about right. The only team that I move around, Georgia's definitely the number 1 team. Cincinnati, I'm fine over there. I'm fine with Alabama being in front of Ohio State. The only team that I kind of question, yes, you've won all your games, but I look at Oklahoma and then playing Kansas. I mean, Kansas had 1 win, and you're losing 10-0 at halftime. Now you come back, man. I mean, and was it Herm Edwards? You play to win the game. I hear you. But don't you think that a loss is going to come at some point in time? I mean, Georgia looks dominant. I mean, if people want to say, oh, Cincinnati, every you're going to have some game you just got to get by. So I'm not going to – you do need to dominate these other opponents. But when I see some of these other schools, now I do see a common opponent when Cincinnati played Indiana and Ohio State played Indiana. We see what Ohio State did to Indiana, but is Indiana – are they the same team they were earlier this year? So all that needs to be taken into account. So I have no problem with all the teams in front of Ohio State except for Oklahoma. Yes, you're undefeated. But, and then for the Oregon fans out there that are listening to the College Football Hour, thank you for listening. But also you can make the argument, hey, we only have 1 loss, and we just had, a big win over UCLA. So I understand those arguments as well. A lot of this is still going to go and it's going to get worked out. It's just that I think it's only a matter of time. Seeing how Oklahoma almost lost to Kansas, I think it's only a matter of time before they lose the game. Or if they do, man, their D coordinator used to be Ohio State's D coordinator, and that was the year that we also couldn't stop a nosebleed. And at the time, Urban did make the change from a defensive coordinator standpoint, unlike Ryan Day did earlier this year. So I see a lot of things in Oklahoma's defense that I saw in Ohio State's defense when we had that same D coordinator. So I don't know. I mean, do you, Sean, Trey, when you look at the rankings right now, is that how you would rank your teams? Or is any moving around you do?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I would probably move both Oklahoma and Alabama down and move Ohio State and Michigan up above them, because Oklahoma, to me, and maybe I'm passing judgment on them based on years past, but you touched on the issue with the Kansas game. Oklahoma every year has, not just a loss, but it seems like a bad loss to just an unranked team out of nowhere.
Yeah, they played the fire a lot this year, real close games.
Right, and the thing is, then they go in the playoffs and they get shellacked, and it's just because the Big 12 is just, for the last several years they've kind of struggled. I mean, Texas is down. Yeah. They lost to A&M. There's just not much there. The other thing is Alabama still has a lot of problems. To me, this is the weakest Nick Saban team probably since his first year to me. And I don't think it's anywhere close. I mean, they're, I think, 80th in sacks allowed. Their defense is just, they've had injuries on that defense. Their defensive line isn't particularly great. Their secondary is not particularly great. I mean, they're beatable. I'll go ahead and say I think Stetson Bennett could beat Alabama this year.
So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, Sean, right now you're guaranteeing a victory of Georgia over Alabama. Is that what I heard?
I am. If they were to play tomorrow, I would guarantee that victory.
Oh, wow. Woo.
Even with Stetson Bennett starting. And it's not a disrespect to Alabama. It's just, they're just down this year. And you got to win football in the trenches. I think related to that too, right? You're kind of looking for some of these teams that maybe have some struggles or issues early in the year, looking to see if they improve. Alabama hasn't improved. Ohio State has. The other thing too is this is what's crazy about the rankings to me is, and again, I know Michigan gets no sympathy with you, Scott, but they're still in, depending on the year, second best conference in college football. They're undefeated, and yet somehow people are justifying Alabama being in front of them. Makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. And the thing is they've won in more dominating fashion than Oklahoma has. I mean, a lot of this for Oklahoma, why they're number 4, is because the freshman quarterbacks kind of come off the bench and save their behinds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those, to me, it's still, this is where the fact that Cincinnati had a good team last year, and then they lost a very close game that they could have won versus Georgia, who now is looking great this year from one team in the country. Cincinnati has earned their position, but it is still because you're not one of those Power 5 conferences. Yeah. If you don't go undefeated, if they lose a game, I think they're out. Otherwise, They have a very good chance to get in. The problem is you look at these other Power 5 conferences. Oklahoma has not looked like world beaters. However, to me, if you win all your games and you're in a Power 5 conference, it's tough to leave you out unless you're Wake Forest. Sorry, all the Demon Deacon fans listening to the program. So, because now I think this is the first year that Clemson's definitely going to be left out, but this is the first year that the ACC, I think, is going to be left out of the playoff. Anything's possible, but I think it's almost certain that they'll be left out. And the name I was looking for of the defensive coordinator who used to be at Ohio State and now is at Oklahoma is Alex Grinch. And it was in 2018 when he was the D coordinator and we gave up a bunch of yards. So I'm not surprised whatsoever that Oklahoma's defense is struggling.
All right, let me throw some scenarios at you, Cannon, real quick, guys.
Just scenarios. I like scenarios, Trey.
Scenarios. All right.
What about scenarios?
Yeah, that's good. All right. Let's say for this 4th spot, let's say Ohio State wins out, Oregon wins out. Who gets that 4th spot? Even though Oregon, you were ranked ahead of Oregon currently and maybe still trend. You both went out and they have that not neutral site, but they have that non-con win. Who gets that 4th spot?
I hear you, but who are the other 3 spots?
That's what I'm saying. Who gets it? Let's say.
Well, Georgia. I think what he's saying is that let's just say the top 3 are what they are. Yeah. The top three are the way they currently are, and the four spot's the one that's changing.
And both you guys went out, both you guys win your conferences, and then they have that one loss over you. Who gets in, you think? But you guys are currently.
I mean, I'd love to say Ohio State, but I mean, hey man, that's why do you play the games then? So as far as that goes, I understand if they put in Oregon. Yeah. I absolutely understand if they put in Oregon, but then you're saying that would be Georgia, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma would be the other teams?
Let's just say if we knock out Bama, because I think, do we all agree that if Bama gets knocked out again, 2 losses are out? I don't care if Nick Saban goes up there on his high horse. We're Alabama.
Well, and I think where I messed it up is let's just say if it's, Georgia and Cincinnati are the top 2, and then Oklahoma as well. Trey, is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And would you leave Cincinnati in all these? Like they take care of business, and then everybody else?
See, that's the other. That's why I asked who the other teams are. So Georgia, you went out, you're in. You have one loss, probably in. But I will say, man, I think the Big Ten champion will probably be in. I just will, because here's the only thing I have to say. I understand Oregon fans. If you said no, we should be in. We won the head-to-head game in Columbus. I understand all that. We're a different team now than what we were. But also, when I look at the top 10 right now, or for that matter, the top 20, and I see that Ohio State's going to be playing Penn State this week, and then a couple weeks they're going to play Michigan State. Now maybe those teams drop out of maybe they drop down, but who is Oregon playing in the top 20? I don't think they're playing any top 20 teams. So I don't even think they're playing any. I think they're the only Pac-12 team ranked. Am I looking at that right? I think they're the only Pac-12 team ranked that I can see.
Colorado, Washington State, Utah, none of these are ranked, to be honest. So yeah, you do have a point.
So that's the other point,
What about this scenario? Let's just say Oklahoma wins their conference. Georgia and Cincinnati win their conference. Ohio State loses. Let's say Ohio State wins Michigan. And let's say Wake Forest wins out. Who gets that 4th spot?
So here's what I see. I see even a one-loss Georgia team. If you win the SEC, I think you're in. Cincinnati, because you're not a Power 5 team, and that Indiana win doesn't look as good. That's a possibility, depending how you play down the road, that you're out. Alabama with 2 losses, you're out. Oklahoma wins out. I just don't see. Man, I don't see you leaving
Well, I guess to be more like direct, let's say the last spot that's up for grabs is between the winner of an undefeated Wake Forest and a 1-loss Ohio State team. Who do you think gets that spot?
I don't think I'm
tough, right?
Do you really? I mean, I'm with you. Here's the thing. I don't think it's going to come down to that. I think hey, look, for all the Demon Deacon fans, I know you listen to for all the Demon Deacon fans, I know they're listening to the program. I hear everything you're saying. It's very difficult to leave out an undefeated team.
No, it's not. Not to me, it's not. There's no way.
I don't think they're going to leave out Ohio State.
Same league as Ohio State. I would punch that ticket for Ohio State all day, every day. I don't care if you have 2 losses. I would put an Ohio State over Wake Forest. You're just not going to has anybody even actually seen a highlight of a Wake Forest game? I'm sure we probably all
did versus Army.
I don't remember.
Here's the problem. I'm looking at Wake Forest's schedule right now. Old Dominion, Norfolk State. I mean, look at these cupcakes they played. Florida State, obviously a horrible fucking team, right? UVA, Louisville, Syracuse, Army. Ready for this? They beat Army 70-56.
Yeah,
can you imagine it's defense optional. So, as horrible as Clemson has been, I think they're going to look. A lot of these teams, man, are going to go, and they're going to go and lose somewhere down the way. I'm just saying, if you're a Power 5 team, it's and you win all your games, it's going to be tough to leave them out, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And if your boy
is that really politics? I mean, I guess it's all subjective, right? When you can't have enough to cover this, plus some hot at large teams like. But to me, it's ridiculous. Why would you put in an undefeated Wake Forest team just based on the whole coulda, woulda, shoulda thing? I mean, everybody knows they're not going.
at the end of the day, though, too, it's a television program, so that's another reason they're not going to go and put in Wake Forest because they're not going to pull the same numbers. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I would say that's what's going to happen. You know, and
exactly.
you haven't done anything. It's not like Wake Forest has been kicking ass for these last 3 or 4 years. You haven't. And on top of that, look if you play. So if Ohio State would have played Old Dominion or Norfolk State as our out of conference instead of scheduling Oregon, yeah, we'll mark us down for victory. You know what I mean? So where is your big out of conference matchup that you have? You don't have one because you didn't think you'd be 7-0 by now. Now, if I think what it all comes back to, Trey, or what it all comes back to, Sean, if you want to blame someone, the person you need to blame is your boy Greg Sankey for lying to everybody about Texas and Oklahoma and saying, hey, we need to expand the playoff. And then the main reason you expand the playoff is when you bring in Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. That's where you say, well, hey, now you'll have a shot because there's going to be 12 teams. I think they're still going to go to 12 teams. I want a 12-team playoff. I like it even more than 8. From the very beginning, even Ohio State got in as a 4th team in 2014, I said it needs to be 8 teams. But
You have. I'll give you credit for that.
I still think I think 12 is even better. It's just that if Greg Sankey would have handled things the way he did, and I don't blame him because it's a power move. Here you go, we'll just take over college football. However, that's why everybody else says, well, why should we just give you what you want? Now, we're probably going to do it eventually because the answer to all your questions is money. Everybody's going to make more money doing it. Okay. But they have this alliance. Don't forget about the alliance because it means nothing because there's no written agreement. But there is an alliance out there. It means nothing, but it means, but it is out there.
But it means everything at the same time, though.
Potentially. I still like the idea of the 6 best conference championships and then 6 at large. I like it. I love it. And when people say, oh, hey, it's just going to water it down, bullshit. There are certain teams that go and make it into the NFL playoffs every year. And there's some teams, though, there's next level, you're going to win the Super Bowl. And there's other teams you're happy to get in. Hey, the Browns were one of those. And then, hey, we actually had a chance last year to beat Kansas City, and then you lost that game. So be it. But the way they look right now, I'm talking about the Cleveland Browns, you could be lucky to make the playoffs. And if you make the playoffs, you're just going to be happy to get one victory because you just have those teams that can make it in, and then you can have those next levels. Also, by the way, does everybody remember Oklahoma, Boise State, all these other big bowl games that happen over the years that have been matchups that maybe Alabama doesn't win a national title just because they get knocked off. Just like in March Madness, when some school knocks a team off, you're going to get more games, and I think you're going to get some upsets along the way. Doesn't mean that team's going to go on to win a national title. So I hope we still get there to 12 teams because then, when Florida goes and doesn't show for the bowl game, and I don't have to listen to them complain about it. So if you get into the playoffs, you should care. And then more kids are not going to just, take the bowl season off.
No, it's true.
I agree. Very good points.
So,
now,
Trey,
Sean,
I think
do you have someone to respond to, Sean? That's what I want to know.
Trey, so I think we had some comments to our podcast that were left by Talking Dogs, right? Which again, big shout out. Thank you so much. I believe we had one poster on there. What was his name, Trey? Concerning Trey Scott and the recent commits we've had?
I've been Brady or one of those, but yeah, go ahead. I can try to find.
All right. And I actually want to set this up as a separate segment, Trey, if you could just set this up separately. First of all, Brady, thank you like a ton just for listening to the podcast, for having patience, because I'll be honest, I'm not the most easy person to tolerate. But again,
Sean, I don't think it was Brady. Brady was the one. Brady 01 was the one that didn't like all my F-bombs, which, as I've said before, I'm really trying to fucking stop with all the F-bombs, okay? But, we can only do our best. I think you're looking for Evans Knight 98.
All right. Well, Evans 998. First of all, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. First of all, I want to be clear on something. I've never questioned Trey Scott's ability when it comes to X's and O's of actually coaching the position. What I've always questioned is his recruiting ability. And I'm still not wrong based on that. I know you're trying to bring up the fact that Trey Scott, or really Georgia, had a 5-star recruit at defensive end and a 4-star / 5-star, depending on what recruiting service you're looking at, defensive tackle recruit in the same week in Bear Alexander. Here's why I'm still not sold on Trey Scott. First of all, I think you need to actually do a little bit more research behind who the primary recruiter was. That 5-star's name is Mikhail Williams. His primary recruiter was Trey. Who was it? His name escapes me. Del McGee, who is without question the best recruiter on Georgia's staff. So Del McGee is the one who got Mikhail Williams. Del McGee, before he was in college football, was the head coach at Columbus Carver, I believe, in Columbus, Georgia, which is where Mikhail Williams is from. So he's been the primary recruiter on him since day one. So you really don't give, to me, I don't give I don't give Trey Scott credit for that because he's not really the one that's selling him on the University of Georgia's program. I think kind of his job at that point is just not to give off any red flags if the kid doesn't want to play there, right? It's the same thing. Del McGee is also the guy that got, Scott's boy Justin Fields to the University of Georgia and committed there. Del McGee is a big reason why Georgia gets as many 5-stars as they do. He's in on a lot of guys. He's a primary recruiter on a ton of guys. So again, what I would say is just because a guy is coaching, is the position coach at the university, doesn't mean he's the guy that's recruiting him to that university. It's not the case. I will say that he was the primary on Bear Alexander, but again, that's a 4-star, right? Which, hey, I love Bear Alexander. Trey can verify this. Bear Alexander is the guy I wanted most this cycle than anybody because, that 3-4 defense, it runs based on your nose tackle and your ability to kind of get combo blocks there. So you free up somebody else to get to the quarterback. But that said, Trey Scott's still a below average recruiter. I mean, again, just based on the amount of talent you got in the state of Georgia. And again, I understand too, he's recruiting in the 3-4 system, so it can be a little bit difficult there. But, Clemson owned him on the recruiting trail for a long time. He got lucky, and he's been lucky in that, a lot of, the guys that he's got on this defensive line, he's had other elite recruiters. But Scott Fountain was the primary recruiter for who's number 88, Trey? Defensive tackle? Jalen Carter. Scott Fountain was the primary recruiter on him. And again, thank God we got him because we whiffed on Brian DeReese, Miles Murphy, a lot of guys. Again, I get it. Like, we're doing great this year along the defensive line, but, let's not lose sight of reality either. Trey Scott's not an elite recruiter. He's nowhere close to that. I mean, he kind of hovers around what Rodney Gardner was. It's just that he's got, better recruiters around him.
Good technician and good D-line coach.
Yes, and I'll also sit here and give him credit that he helped get and was a primary guy on getting Bear Alexander back in. So I mean, I will give him credit for that. But I mean, again, you're talking about 1 5-star or 1 4-star, depending on which service you're looking for over how many years. Shouldn't really be hard to sell that position in Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. Very good thoughts. Thanks for asking the mailbag forum questions. Anything before we go on the way out, guys?
Yes, and if you have more comments, especially, God forbid, good feedback, we'd love to have good feedback. But if you want to continue to trash Sean or Trey, we're all for it here at the College Football Hour.
Please, believe me, trash me. I actually enjoy it.
Exactly.
Because I'm normally right.
Yeah, that's what we like.
And Brady 01, I'm sure you're listening this week because you're giving us another chance. And just remember that I'm really fucking trying hard. I'm really trying fucking hard, man, to not drop as many F-bombs because we want to go and have a diverse audience from both, advertising with Kool-Aid for Kids to all of your scrotum shady needs.
All right.
For adult men, by the way, for adult men.
Exactly. All right. Well, Herschel Talkers.